Hi everyone, this is Anna from Koala Soap, and I've had a lot of questions about the water-soluble paper soaps. I kind of went through the last tutorial a little quickly, and I actually thought I would just do an updated tutorial on this. So because I like higher quality photos, I get my photos either from Shutterstock, Deposit Photos, or what have you. As you can see, what's really cute here is there's a koala, and I was so tempted to do the video on that for Mom tonight, and the bunny for Kaylin. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this one, which I find very interesting because, like I said before, the soluble paper, for one sheet, we can stick, about 8 images on it if we do it correctly. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick one of these, and they give you, other suggestions. But remember, we want a white background. So something like this wouldn't really work. This is cute, and these other ones are cute too. And they have, you can see I've looked at several watercolor ones that I was thinking about. But I'm going to stick with this one right here, because I'm just going to get more bang for my buck. So what I'm going to do is I am going to download this image. And I'm now in my Photoshop. Now I am by no means a Photoshop expert in any way, shape, or form. So bear with me on this. The first thing I'm going to do is, here's my image. It doesn't have any watermarks on it now, so that's great. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep this up here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit New. And I want to do a regular paper size, so I'm going to change this to inches. So I think it's 8.5 inches by 11. And I want to make sure the background's white. You can do all these different colors, but let's just keep it to white. And this is where we're going to start. So I'm going to click OK. And now this is going to represent our piece of paper. I'm going to go ahead and maybe zoom out just a bit so I can get the whole piece of paper in here. So that was our first part. The second part that I'm going to do, and any photo editor that you have will work on this. You don't need to use this by any means. Please don't feel that you need to get a subscription for this. Next thing I'm going to do is I went ahead and measured the size of what I need for the pink mold, and it's roughly just under 3 1/4 by 2 1/4 for the design we're going to do today. Now, I know I've said we can stick 5 or 6 designs on it. I'm not going to, or even up to 8, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that many. I might just double some of these images a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I like this lighthouse, and I like some of these that are kind of longer than wider. I don't know if this one's going to work, but you know what, let's try it. So maybe we will have 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to duplicate the layer, and you'll see why in a second. So there's that. Now I'm going to crop, and I am going to do this one first. And now that I have it, I'm going to do size. You can kind of see where it is here. I'm going to move this to inches. Now, like I said, I'm not a Photoshop expert. It's just under 1/4, so instead of 3.25 and you know what, I'm going to do 1/0 and 1/0. It's like an 1/8, but we'll go ahead and do it this way. So this will be our picture. As you can see, I have a little bit of that steering wheel there, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to erase that. And remember, it's going to be white anyway, so that's not going to show up. But I think we're good there. So now what I'm going to do is we have it resized. I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to drag this picture in here. Make sure you have this thing here on. And I'm going to put this back here. Now, again, I'm not a Photoshop expert, so I'm sure there's other ways of doing this. But this is the way I'm doing it. So what I'm going to do is we have that, and I can go ahead and you see what this one, I can do that. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. And this pops up. I'm going to say okay. And then we're going to put one here. And then we'll duplicate it again. Okay. And we're going to put that there. Okay, so I had to re-upload it because when I cropped it, it deleted the rest. I'm done with this design, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. And no, I'm not going to save changes. So I have this back up, and I think the next one I will do is this one right here. So I will make a copy just for the heck of it. I just like making copies in case I really mess it up. And I'm going to go to the crop tool, and I'm just going to crop it here. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to resize it again. So image size, not canvas size, image size. And we said 2.10 by 3.10. Make sure this isn't clicked because that'll make it stay the same and it'll really mess with your image. So 2.10 and 3.10. We'll hit OK, and there we go. So we're going to bring it right over here. We're going to make sure we have this clicked on, not the crop. We're going to bring this over here, and we're going to drag it in. I always like to put it right back up there while I'm working on it. And then we're going to duplicate. So that's a right click. Another right click. Okay, so now we need to find one more design here, so I will get rid of this. And for the next one, we'll do this message in the bottle. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've made a whole page full of these images, which I like, and I think they'll look good in our mold. We're going to be using the basic pink rectangle molds today. So I'm going to go ahead and print this out, and then we're going to let it dry. I haven't before, but I did read an article where it's best to let them sit for 24 hours. I've never done it before, but you know, why not? Let's just do it. So I'm going to go ahead and print this out. And what I would do is print it on regular paper first, and then you can go ahead and just make sure it fits. So after I print this out, we'll be back. Okay, so we've got our design going, and the next thing we're going to do is this is the mold that we're going to be using for this design. We're going to take our crystal clear melt and pour, and we're going to melt it down, and we don't want to pour it too hot. I have these that have dried, and I've gone ahead and cut these out. And the thing that I've done is the same thing that I did for the last video, is I pour a little bit of soap, just some scrap melt and pour, and I kind of put it on there, and I use a pencil and just make little hatch marks, and then I cut it down to size, and I make sure that it will fit comfortably in these molds, which it does. If it's not fitting quite right, or it's warping a little bit, then you do want to cut a little bit more off. Another thing that I would suggest is make sure you just leave a little bit of opening on the sides here so that one layer can actually adhere to the other, even though we're going to be putting this under the crystal clear melt and pour. It just makes sure that your layers are going to adhere a little bit better. So let's go ahead and melt our soaps, or actually just melt this soap, and then we'll get going. Okay, so this is nice and melted, and you really only want to do 10 to 20-second spurts in the microwave, because if this overheats, it'll start to get a little cloudy. Now this is hot, but let's see how hot. That's like 183, 181, 183. And I can go ahead and pour it now. You cannot add any fragrance to this. You can't add any colorants, nothing to this layer because it needs to stay as clear as possible. But what we can do is go ahead and pour it. It'll just cool it a little bit faster. And you want a very thin layer. I would say maybe a third. And you do want to squirt it with alcohol because you will get some bubbles in there. And just that pour, it's now 152, so it comes down pretty fast. Now clear in 149. Clear melt and pour will develop a skin at a higher temperature. So whereas you could have your shea butter melt and pour, you could get down to the 110s, like 115, 120, and you'll still not have a skin. Here you're going to develop a skin fairly quickly. So it's kind of important that this part is probably one of the more important parts of it. You don't want to put this in when it's too hot, 143, because it can actually, even if we let this sit for 24 hours, it could actually make the inks run. So we're just going to let it sit for I would just maybe try to get it into the 130s. I'll even go for 139. And then if it does bleed, it shouldn't. I've never had it bleed before. Yeah, 136, that was fast. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it face down. We're going to use a skewer to kind of help us. Tap out any bubbles, put them off to the side. And it's okay if the soap comes up around it, that's just fine. Okay, we're already developing the skin. So we're going to go ahead and squirt with alcohol. And just another thin layer. And what we need to do is a white background behind this. We'll squirt it again with alcohol. And then we're going to just let it set up a little bit. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and melt our shea butter melt and pour, and then that way we can go ahead and start pouring it on top of this. Okay, so these have hardened up a little bit, and we're going to go ahead. We have our shea butter melt and pour melted down. It's in the 160s. We can go ahead and start mixing our colorant. First we're going to do white. We can put our fragrance in here now. That we can do. This particular energy has a yellow tint to it. But I don't think it's going to affect the design at all. It hasn't in the past. And we don't want to pour until we're at 130 or under. So this says 160. And then when these are hard enough, they're just a little bouncy, we're going to actually make hatch marks with the skewer. And the reason is it won't matter because you won't be able to see those hatch marks through the paper. If you're unsure or uncomfortable, you can do the hatch marks along the design, and that way it'll help it adhere. So we're going to wait for all of this to cool down a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and pour. Okay, so we're gonna let this set, and then we're gonna have a little bit more, because I like to, with these colors, I think Ariel Blue would kind of look good with that. So I'm actually gonna do another layer, because a lot of you have asked, you know, can you do other colors behind the design? Yes, after you do this white layer, it'll show up better that way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit more Shea Butter Melt and Pour, and I'm gonna add the Ariel Blue in, and then once this sets up, we'll pour it, and then we will unmold. So for this part, I'm gonna go ahead and just mix our mica and get ready to pour this soap. Okay, for the next part of this video, this part gets a little harder to do. So what we did was I took some melt and pour, just some remnants, and I put it in our basic pink rectangular mold. Everything is setting over there, getting ready to be popped out. And what I did was I took this and a pencil. Do not use a pen, because a pen will get on your soap later. You can probably even see that. All like the little edges here. So use a pencil. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line. You're going to hold this down tight. A line, a line, a line, until you have a rectangle there. The next thing you're going to do is you need something straight, like a ruler. I actually just used my cutter because it was perfect. And what I did was I made intersecting lines here, and I made sure I went past where it connects here, okay? And I did it here too. So that was this part of it. The next part is using this mold. Now, this part again is very optional for this soap. You don't need to do it, but I want to show you what you can do if you do it. So we're going to take some more Shea Butter Melt and Pour base. We're going to melt it down. We're going to use Bronze Age by StarDust Micas, and we're going to get everything mixed up, and we will be right back. Okay, our Shea Butter is nice and melted. I went ahead and added half a dropper to right about here of energy into our base. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add my mica. Get everything ready, and we're going to be using this mold, and we're going to make it, or try to make it, look like borders. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but if it doesn't, we still have a really cool soap. Okay. Okay, so now we have our mica. Not a drop is wasted in our soap. And I really don't have like a yellow gold, so this is going to have to do. This is pretty close to it. So what we're going to do next is you need a spatula that is not rigid. You do not want something like this, because you're going to be scraping, and you're just going to scrape the soap right off where it needs to be. So you can, if it's detachable, great. If it's not, just use the flat end. This can get a little bit messy, and that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and pour, and there's the mess. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just get the excess off of there and just let it sit. Okay, so this part is done. We're going to go ahead and unmold and see what our, there's our first one. Very pretty. There's our second one. There's our third one. Okay, so we have these, and I think these would be good enough. And what we're going to do is, next thing we're going to do is we're going to unmold this. We have to do about 3 or 4 sets of this. I've already done some over here, as you can see, so we'll be working on that in a second. And then this was just additional soap that I just put in here just so I could get it out of the measuring cup. So let's go ahead and we'll wait for these to cool down, and then we'll start with our frame. Okay, so I've unmolded the two, and so you can see these are our borders. I have a little bit of water on there because I just washed off my mat. Okay, so we have our guides. We need a knife, or your soap cutter will do just fine. And this is kind of my little tester template. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this, you're going to run it to both ends so that the lines go through them now on the template. And what you're going to do is, once you have it lined up nicely, you're going to hold it. Oops. And you're going to cut it the best you can. And you're going to put your extra soap back in there. And then you're going to adjust this so it's right there in the guides. And it's quite tricky. It really is quite tricky. And you're just going to do the same thing here. Make sure it's straight. Make sure you don't accidentally cut your other soap. And then you're gonna go straight down. You're gonna have this extra piece. This piece won't fit over here. It's just too short. So we're gonna put that with the rest of our soap. And then what I do is, after I'm done cutting, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of put it on my soap. Actually, we can actually just do it on here now, since we have these unmolded, and kind of see how they're going to look. And then we have some shorter pieces here. And another short piece here. And that would be your frame. I don't know if you can see that. Now what you would have to do to get this to stay is you're going to remelt your brown here. And the reason I want to remelt the brown is if there's any little openings here, it will cover it up. Now I have 2 different frames here that I can use. I have 2. I'm going to leave one just blank, and then I'm going to go ahead and make these into little frames. You don't have to do this, like I said, it's completely optional, but you will need a dropper, you will need soap that's about the same color as this. You will need your skewer, because you're going to have to make your hatch marks to help this stick better. And we'll go ahead and get this a little bit warmer, and we'll be right back. I'm going to go ahead and have pictures of how they turn out in a sec. So this is another option you can do if you don't want it to do the soap frame, which as you could see was quite time consuming and tedious. You could actually, they have in that deposit photos, they actually have a rope border, and you can size it to what we've been doing and put that lighthouse in there, and then you have a frame. I didn't do this design on the soap, and I now am regretting it. But anyway, this is Anna from Koala Soap. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for the pictures.